Caleb Williams goes under the prospect spotlight. What is his strengths, his weaknesses, and is he really Pat Mahomes? We're going to talk about this and more coming up next.
You are Locked On NFL Draft, your daily podcast covering the NFL Draft. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Locked On family? Welcome back to the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast, your daily podcast covering your favorite draft prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your boy, Damian Parson, always on the ones and twos. You can find and follow me on X at DP_NFL. I am a senior draft analyst, and thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and every day. Shot for being our everyday. So, I got to kick this intro to my guy, Mr. LSU himself, Keith Sanchez. You can find and follow him on X at The Talent Code. Keep talk to him, baby.
What's up, Locked On family? This is Keith Sanchez, 2019 national champ with those LSU Bengal Tigers, man, here to bring you championship level content surrounding the NFL draft 24/7, 365. This, the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast, is the best source for everything NFL draft content, the best NFL draft content that there is out there. DP. We're going to have some really good conversations, man. We're talking Caleb Williams, putting him under the prospect spotlight. We're probably going to have a little debate, right? If he's a generational talent or not. And then you straight from Clemson Pro Day. So you're going to give us the update on Nate Wiggins, the Mr. 4-2 himself. He finally did position drills. We want to know, DP. We want to know from you, how did Nate Wiggins look in position drills, man? And then we're going to finish this thing up with a lad McConkey conversation, right? Is it time to stop putting him in the Cooper Cup, Julian Edelman, right? Wes Welcome threshold, because he's tested himself out of that mode and he should be looked at as an outside wide receiver that can win vertically. But before we get into all of those really good conversations, hit the like button, make sure you comment and subscribe. And DP, why don't you hit him with our title sponsor?
Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. Caleb Williams. Generational is a term I hate with everything in me. But when I look at this young man's game, I hate that. I hate that term so much. But when I look at Caleb, man, he's as good as advertised, right? Like
as good as advertised. Yep.
As good as advertised, man. And the skill set, and typically when we talk about a lot of these processes, like, man, what kind of offense does he need to be in? Things like that. Physically, he can fit any offense. Yep. It doesn't really matter what kind. Short game, intermediate, deep, the vertical passing game, RPO, whatever, spread, of course he ran that the air raid. You can put him on, I think you can get some good stuff out of him once you get him used to being under center, give him a real run game, put him in a pro style offense. Mentally, you can say, well, it might be a little bit of an adjustment, because it's like, turning your back to the defense, getting under center, doing things that a lot of those Pac-12 guys don't do in college. But at the same time, man, physically, he's gifted. He's mobile. He thrives. I don't know if there's been besides Patrick Mahomes and maybe Kyler Murray, in terms of quarterbacks that just thrive in chaos. Whereas like pressure,
they invite.
Don't get me wrong.
Like, and sometimes they create their own chaos.
100%. All three of them, they will create their own chaos, Keith. But I just looking at, man, I understand why people have felt the way they felt for the last 2 years.
Well, DP, I think it's important that people press the brakes and put this in context for themselves. Let's be honest, right? Like you said, Caleb Williams is an ultimate talent. He is talented, the arm talent, the everything, the mobility, being able to make some of the he has 5 of the best throws that we've seen from a quarterback in the past 10 years, right? Like let's just be honest, right? Like if you watch the film. But this conversation of Caleb's talent is not about Caleb's talent. It's about the likability part with Caleb Williams, right? And that's the part. And this is where people, and I want, having this conversation with our everydayers, we use the phrase, hey, I like that guy, right? But I always want to put this in the context. When you say like him, are you talking about his film, or do you like his personality, right? Because it can go both ways, DP. If a guy rubs you wrong and you're evaluating the film and you're just like, I'm just not buying in. Why? What you like about him as a person has nothing to do with potentially the football player. And it goes the other way, right? You can sit there and the guy crushes an interview and you're like, man, I like that guy. And now you find yourself rooting for him. You find yourself elevating draft grades. You find yourself giving grades and seeing things that aren't there because you like him, right? So you have to kind of put that in the context of what do I like? I like the player or I like the person, right? And right now, I think the Caleb Williams evaluation and much of it, he's put himself in this situation, right? With how he's handled some things, but you cannot deny the talent that Caleb Williams is. And then now it's time to pull back the many layers of who's the personality. Now, when it goes into quarterback evaluations, right, we're talking about drafting this guy, general manager, being a face of a franchise, XYZ. We're talking about all of that. That's the details to figure out, right? But you have to separate what the talent is versus if you, quote unquote, like a guy. And I think that's very important as we go through this draft process.
100%, Keaton. I think the big thing about him is like, and I say this, elite players, especially at the quarterback position, stars, they're going to be arrogant. It's, you know what I'm saying?
I mean, DP, we've talked about this, right? That nobody really likes Aaron Rodgers, right? But that doesn't stop him from winning 4 MVPs and throwing for 5,000 yards every season and lighting people up for 40 touchdowns, right?
Bro, I don't know if you remember, but Greg Jennings talked about how he tried to shop him to a rival team mid-game. You know what I mean? Yep. Like, oh, well, he'll be a free agent this year. Maybe y'all should go after him. It was like, bro, what are you doing? Like, even his teammates didn't like him, but, for the most part, but they still played great together. So, at the end of the day, the arrogance comes with the territory of being that star player and kind of what heavy is the head that wears the crown. Like, that's just what it is. And I think people get turned off by it. But a lot of times, guys, like, most of these dudes are arrogant to an extent,
they're
right?
different. Yeah,
they're different.
And I watched, and I'll go to my stuff, right? Obviously, I was in the building with Joe Burrow, right? Now, was Joe Burrow this? No. Right? Was he a likable guy? Yes, very likable guy. What you see on the camera, what you see in the games, yes, that's him. But there was also a level of a standard that he had to hold everybody to, right? So you can best believe he ruffled some feathers while he was there, right? Because that's part of the position, right? You're not responsible for just yourself. You're responsible for the other 10 guys on the field, right? You're responsible for getting everybody aligned. Then what you're also responsible for is the wins and the losses more than anybody else, right? So when you understand that you have to hold that pressure more than anybody else and you have to hold that responsibility, you're probably going to walk a little bit different. It's probably going to mean a little bit more to you. You're probably going to be a little bit more angry than what everybody else, right? Because you know what's on the line. But I want to wrap it up, DP, if you don't mind, just the prospect that Caleb Williams is. And I think we both agree that he's I feel like, I'll say this, that I feel like he's an elite level talent at the quarterback position. And when we grade the film, I want to ask you this: how big of a deal is the play style for you? Because I'm falling DP in the sense of the fact of there's no perfect prospect, and the highlights far outweigh he holds on to the football. Like, I feel like I should be able to tell Caleb to throw the swing pass to the running back out of the backfield, right? I feel like I should be able to get that out of him if I can coach.
No, I think, I'm with you on that, Keith. The highs outweigh the lows, and he's an elite talent for sure. I think the main thing for him is getting him with a coach and that's going to empower him, that's going to like be there for him and support him, but also an offensive coordinator that does not mind going and telling him, hey, we got a swing route in the flats for a reason. Hit that. Turn down that deep shot and come down to the underneath route and give yourself and your offensive line a chance.
And I think
different defenses.
Yeah, and I think that's going to, I don't want to say make or break, right? But that's going to be his career, right? Because we know that pushing the ball vertically, down the field accuracy, all that stuff he has without a doubt, right? It's just naturally for him. It's going to be going through the progressions, taking the short stuff. It's going to be the same stuff in, I hate bringing his name up, right? But it is going to be the Patrick Mahomes transition when it was the too high and he had to start just taking the stuff underneath. Because remember, there was a point, I believe, that Patrick Mahomes, people were saying, oh, he's throwing too many interceptions and things like that. And they're not in rhythm. And that was with Tyreek Hill, I believe. So that was a couple of years ago, and it was still that conversation. So I think that's going to kind of determine. But that's why I love the Commander situation, just familiarity, right? He knows everything. And then it's like, okay, now is this a coach that he respects? that he can,
Yeah.
bring down and be like, hey, do this. This is how we're going to go about it. So be a really good conversation with DP. Listen, man, we wrapped up the Caleb Williams prospect spotlight. I thought that was a really good conversation with DP. You were live and in action at the Nate Wiggins Clemson Pro Day, and I can't wait to get your takes because we haven't talked about it yet. So we're going to get into your takes about Nate Wiggins. Is he cornerback one now for you after the workouts?
You shouldn't have to worry when it comes down to buying tickets to your next big event. But if you wait till the last minute, you will, because you're trying to compete with other buyers and you're trying to find the best deals. But let me introduce you to Game Time. They are the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all your sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. What are the other benefits? Well, let me tell you, family. Last minute tickets, flash deals, zone deals. Their tickets are easy to find and buy. And this is my favorite part. They show the views from all the seats in the venue. So before you purchase that ticket, you know what vantage point you will have. You can go and see Round of 64, the men's NCAA March Madness tournament, for as low as $47 on the Game Time app. That's a deal you really just can't beat. So all you need to do is download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. Nate Wiggins, Clemson cornerback, is not my CB1 based off the workworkout, but he had a great workout. Like, I think I'm not gonna lie to you. My rankings, my cornerback rankings are so jumbled right now between Nate, Terrion, Kool-Aid, and Quinyon. I don't know who you asked me. I wake up tomorrow, Keith. You text me, hey, DP, who's CB1? Quinyon Mitchell. You asked me Saturday, it might be Terrion Arnold. It's so jumbled, and that's a great problem to have. But like I said, Nate Wiggins, for one, he stood on, and I tweeted out, he stood on his testing. Why wouldn't you not, right? You ran a 4.28 at the combine, especially after being at the podium and telling people, well, if you think I run a 4.5, you're not watching the right tape, and you go and bust a 4.28, right? So he stood on the athletic stuff he did, but it was, and the way he performed on the field was outstanding. Fluid transitions, clean hips, flipping, turning, breaking. He's a T-stepper. Shout out to the primetime Deion Sanders, Coach Prime. Always talked about he was on the NFL Network. Guys on that W drill, when you're in that back pedal and you go to drive, he's a little bit of a T-stepper, but man, the ball, like, I don't, it's crazy. I never looked into it, Keith. I don't know if he got wide receiver in his background, but he catches the ball very well. You might remember because
yeah, I'm trying to remember in high school. I think he did play some wide receiver, if I can remember. I think because he went to Westlake out there in Atlanta. I think he did play some wide receiver. But what were you saying about his ball skills?
It's just natural, like tracking, the natural hands. He attacks the ball at the catch point, which, as we've talked about a few times, you look at the tape and Drake May tried him on the right sideline on the defensive left. Right, that bail, then turn and drive, and he picked them off. Clean hands. I think it was like week 2 or 3. It was an FAU, I believe. He baited them into a stop route, triggered downhill, not just caught it in stride, and then took it for 6. His ball skills are so natural for a corner that you don't really see that from a lot. Because what's the phrase? They're playing DB and not receiver because they can't catch. Well, that's not the problem with Nate Wiggins, right? You know what I mean? Maybe he just couldn't run routes. I don't know. But like he performed well and he looked very, very good through the drills and through the workouts, man. And it's he's definitely, his name is in that CB1 territory right now. I think the main thing for me is that he's wiry, and you see that at the combine when he ran fast. Same thing. But on tape, you could tell he dropped weight. Like, he does not look this skinny and this thin on tape. And I think what you're going to have to worry about is the Emmanuel Forbes discussion popping up and maybe limiting him as a draft prospect or stopping him from being CB1. Because wasn't Emmanuel CB1 last year in terms of being drafted? No, it was Witherspoon. I'm sorry.
It was, I was about to say it was Witherspoon. Then I think
CB2.
Yeah, and then I think it was Forbes, then Gonzalez or something like that. I think it was in that order. Not to be so talking about it was I was hearing you right talk about Nate Wiggins. I guess I'm pleased with that. As far as CB1 conversation, I don't have him as my CB1, and I don't think I'm going to put him as my CB1. Yeah. But in my mock draft, if people to stick with me. My mock draft, I had him as the first corner taken off the board. I think that teams will fall in love, and I do think he could be an extremely productive player. I think it's the Sauce Gardner, the Emmanuel Forbes conversation of you put him in cover 3, he's going to do great, right? He's going to thrive in that situation. But then obviously the man-to-man situation. So was there something, because I don't even skip over and say the man-to-man situations. In man-to-man situations, I question sometimes his ability to mirror wide receivers in and out of breaks, his ability to sink his hips, his ability to stay attached the entire time. I want to ask you, because I know there's some, every day is out there, some people listening to the podcast that may have some of those same concerns also with those high hip striders, right? So was there a workout or something that you've seen to kind of be like, okay, I feel a little bit more comfortable with him playing man-to-man from what you've seen at the workouts at the pro day?
They did a mirror drill where they had one of the coaches line up at receiver, give him a little shuffle, a little, side to side, and wanted to see how he moved laterally. And I think he did solid. He was solid in that realm in terms of, I think it's still, for him, I think it's more so feel a lot in terms of like, all right, not being over aggressive and trying to jump in front of a guy. You try to keep a guy in front of you, stay square. And I feel like with him, at times you see him be a little antsy where he kind of overplays it and then allows the guy. And of course, when you have recovery speed, like a guy like that he has, it's a little bit easier to fall into that, right? When you're that athletic and that explosive of an athlete, to where I could catch up to a guy. But I think if he starts to develop that patience, Keith, where really reading the torso, the core, because what we always teach DBs is when you in man-to-man, shoulders lie, head fakes lie, eyes lie, and feet lie, but the core never lies because you can't take it nowhere. It's going to be in the same spot. And I think if he starts to really hone in on that aspect, it'll slow down his process. I just feel like he's a little sped up at times and trying to mirror guys, and I saw that a little bit in that drill.
Yeah, and my next question would be, do you think he's a press guy? It has to be like in that press bell side saddle type situation, or do you think he's an off guy, right? Like play 5 to 7 yards off and start from there? Because even I notice from time to time, right, some of those guys who are high hipped and have the longer strides, that playing off sometimes doesn't necessarily benefit them, right? Because the transitions aren't as explosive. So is there something through the workouts that you seem like, what, this guy might be more of a press man situation, or press bell, right? And playing in a cover 3 scheme? Or did you like him, in off situations? How was his back pedal? Was it fluid, the hip transitions and things like that?
No, I feel like his back pedal, I think he could play off and drop off. That back pedal was clean. He kept his shoulders low, hips was dropped, and he transitioned well out of it to turn, just like the same drills that we see at the combine. They ran at the pro day for him as well. But also, I think that looking at him through the transitional drills that they ran, forcing him into working on bail, flip, turn, and drive, and it was just smooth. It was smooth. It was fluid. It was twitchy. It was explosive. We talking about, and then watch him compared to the other guys, his teammate Sheridan Jones. You could just tell the difference in terms of how easy it is for Nate to flip and drive and sink his hips out of the break compared to those bigger body, those kind of more muscular guys, him and Jalen Phillips. Jalen Phillips was a safety. So I just kind of looked at that. I'm like, all right, it's a difference in how he moves. And I think for him, this is a guy that I will feel comfortable putting him in press man, but more so in soft press, right? Not telling him, hey, don't get up there and try to fight physical with physicality, right? Physicality,
definitely. Yep.
Play, 2 yards off, soft press this guy, get in the hip pocket. And with his speed, he's also somebody that I would probably talk to, kind of coach him into, playing kind of not bail, but
trail, like a trail technique.
Yes,
and kind of letting
technique.
I agree with that. And that'll negate the, he'd be able to take away all the underneath stuff. Then on a deep ball, you should have the foot speed to catch back up. So now it's definitely DP. It's a lot of different things you can do with Nate Wiggins as a cornerback, right? And he probably will go in the top 15. You just don't find these type of athletes. They're not just everywhere, right? They're not just growing on trees, and you could just get them in and draft them. So I believe that he will go high. It's going to be really fun just to see as his career, develops and as it unfolds, right? Because we've seen, situations, right? Like we said, we've seen Sauce Gardner, we've seen Emmanuel Forbes, right? Both probably profile very similar, but it matters what situation that they go to depending on what results you're going to get. But DP, I'm ready to have this Lad McConkey conversation, man. Third fastest wide receiver, right under 6 foot, killed the short shuttle in his pro day. Vertical jump is through the roof, broad jump through the roof, right? But we still want to call him Wes Welker. We still want to call him Julian Edelman. So I want to get into this conversation, DP, of what is the real threshold for Lad McConkey, and are people just being lazy when we compare him to other slot wide receivers?
Did you know that even if you have a 401k for retirement, you can still have an IRA? Robinhood has the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But get this, now through April 30th, Robinhood is even boosting every single dollar you transfer in from other retirement accounts with a 3% match. That's right, no cap on the 3% match. Robinhood Gold gets you the most for your retirement thanks to their IRA with a 3% match. This offer is good through April 30th. Get started at Robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees apply. And now for some legal info. Claim as of Q1 2024, validated by Radius Global Market Research. Investing involves risk, including loss. Limitations apply to IRAs and 401ks. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold for 1 year from the date of first 3% match. Must keep Robinhood IRA for 5 years. The 3% matching on transfers is subjected to specific terms and conditions. Robinhood IRA available to U.S. customers in good standing. Robinhood Financial LLC is a registered broker-dealer. Thank y'all for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and every day. Shout out for being out every day. Is Lad McConkey had his pro day, and he basically continued to do what he did at the combine. Test well. You know what I mean? And the speed, the 3-cone, the short shot, like everything that he does has just been good, right? He's had a strong draft process, Keith, and
consistently
season,
elevated. Man. And I remember we talked about him way in November, right? Mm-hmm. Like this was a guy that we liked, and we'll see what happens, and not knowing, but this is a guy that has just consistently increased his draft stock. Like it's like the arrow is pointing up and to the right. It's just the stock is always rising with Lad McConkey. And that's why I want to have this conversation, DP, because post pro day, I forgot who put it out there, right? I mean, not pro day, combine. Somebody put out a Garrett Wilson comp, right? As far as the athletic testing. Daniel Jeremiah. Okay. And that kind of sent the Twitter world into a frenzy, right? Like everybody went crazy about it. Then post pro day, right? He tested short shuttle and stuff like that, and then it was back to the slot wide receiver comps of I forgot who did he test just like. I can't remember. It might have been Cooper Kupp with the short. Yeah, was it the short shuttle was very comparable to Cooper Kupp. But DP, I want to ask: is it time to transition away from Lad McConkey just being a slot wide receiver? Because let's be honest, like usually the slot wide receivers potentially they're there because we like, hey, you're not as fast, so you can have these two-way options, right? Like traditionally, that's why it was the quote-unquote slot wide receiver. You're smart, instinctual, you're on the same page with the quarterback. All of the cliche terms for a slot wide receiver. But Lad McConkey, to me, he has the athletic ability to play on the outside also. And I wonder if we are doing, and because these are the things why the NFL stories become great stories, right? Because nobody foresees it or they overlook it due to past stuff. So like the Tank Dell, right? Tank Dell exploded on the scene because everybody watched the film, or some people watched the film, said he was good, but then also said he was too small, right? And I feel like, could it be the same thing with Lad McConkey, is that, hey, we just can't get out the way of profiling him into a slot wide receiver like a Julian Edelman or, a Wes Welker, and then he's going to come on the scene and go for 1,200 yards if he goes with a good quarterback, and then we're like, man, okay, he's different, right? But we're not appreciating the opportunity to say that right now.
No, it's been, first of all, it's been time to put that Cooper Kupp slot receiver discussion to rest for Ladd. Ladd reminds me of Doug Baldwin. You know what I mean? Like when he was with the Seattle Seahawks. Athletic, quick twitch, quick-footed, great route runner, right? Tough and gritty. Could do punt and kick returns if you needed him to. He could do all the different things you needed, and it just wasn't flashy. He wasn't going to be 6'4", 215, jump 42. He wasn't going to do all these different things that you want from like those big X receivers. But man, like he is an outside receiver. Yes, he can play in the slot, but that's not the only place he can win. And like you said, Keith, it's just been time to end that, man. Like the Garrett Wilson one, that one, I struggle with that one, DJ. I understood the numbers matched up, but I felt like Garrett was much better at the catch point than what Ladd has ever shown.
Yeah, and I think the part of the issue with the Ladd evaluation, right, is that there's not a large sample size. You get what I'm saying? Like with Garrett is like, and when you're comparing guys, you almost comparing them from a college career perspective too. And you're like, Ladd didn't do nowhere near what Garrett did in college, right? At Ohio State. So I think that part kind of throws people. But the part that I did appreciate was taking him and comparing him to another elite athlete, right? That was the part where I was like, okay, the height, weight measurement adds up, and then the 40 time adds up. So I definitely appreciate that part of it. But I told you, I like, because I never heard you say the Doug Baldwin comp, which I like. My comp, I thought of a Santana Moss, right? Like that like type of football player. And the part of the game that we don't necessarily know, DP, is the vertical stuff. And I think that's why he caught everybody off guard. He just didn't do it a lot at Georgia, in my opinion, right? It was the slider, it was the run after the catch ability, XYZ. But if this is a guy that can push vertical, which a 4.39 to me says you can push vertical, right? You can go vertical. If he can do that, DP, you're talking about scary now, right? Like if he gets with a quarterback that can get him the football, it can be a lot of good luck situations with this guy, because what he's done, and I want to tie that back into the Senior Bowl. There's no better way to grade a football player than, or to evaluate a football player than evaluate them playing football. So yeah, the 2 years ago, right? The guy that we probably consider uncoverable was Calvin Austin. Like he did some good stuff. Last year was Tank Dell at the Senior Bowl, right? And nobody wanted any of that smoke at all. Nobody wanted to line up against him. This year, that guy was Ladd McConkey, right? So if the trend continues to go that way, Ladd McConkey is on pace to be a really good NFL wide receiver.
No, 100%. I think like we talk about, man, all the things that you highlight for slot receivers, the cliches, the buzzwords, right? All those things are still there for Ladd, but he does have that Z receiver like athletic profile.
I think that's what, in my opinion, that's what makes it really good for me. Because I'm like drafting this guy is like the floor is 80 catches per year, slot wide receiver. The ceiling is this guy plays all over the place and it gives me 100 catches, right? And he's unstoppable. That's the ceiling. So I think that's the fun part.
No, 100%, Keaton. The offense, like he's a timing guy. You get him with a quarterback that works well with timing in terms that can hit him when he gets open. Oh, you are going to cook with him in your offense, man. Like, you know, up until the Deontay Johnson trade for Carolina, 33 was the spot for him to go to the Carolina Panthers with the timing and rhythm quarterback like Bryce Young. I was like, that's a match made in heaven for those two. Their skill sets pair and parallel so well to where he knows where to be, where he needs to be, how to get to his spot. And Bryce is like, you get there, I'll get it to you. And that's the type of guy that Bryce needs. And then you hope for the development from Mingo and everything else. But they brought in Deontay Johnson, so they might not go a Ladd. They might go somewhere else.
Carolina Panthers, they can't say no to a wide receiver or offensive lineman.
Oh, no. They still going wide receiver. They might just not go Ladd. Save it to get. Just if he falls to that 33rd pick, they watch out for, because they sent like 10 people to South Carolina this week. They was watching that old country dude from Mullen, South Carolina. I know where that's at, Keith. They're definitely got their eyes on Big X.
There we go. Carolina Panthers, figure it out, man. Figure it out one way. Draft the wide receivers, man. Go get them, man. But DP, That wraps up another episode of the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast, man. We are the best for everything NFL draft content. I told you at the top of the show, I'm about to tell you at the bottom of the show, man. Make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you comment. And if you're not subscribed to the channel, subscribe to the channel and tell a friend that this is the best NFL draft content out there. Well, listen, I am Keith Sanchez. You can find me on X at The Talent Code. That right there, my co-host, my guy, man, the guy that doesn't like generational term, right? That is not his thing. That is Damian Parson, man. You can find him on X at DP_NFL. We always like to say, man, y'all come talk to us because we like to talk back.
Go subscribe and follow for free on YouTube, wherever you listen to podcasts, to get the latest episode as soon as it is available. Thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and every day. Shout out for being not every day is. Y'all come and join the conversation again tomorrow on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.